I hope you enjoyed this talk. These talks are always offered freely so that no one is ever denied access to them. And your support, or dana, also makes a big difference. Dana is the ancient Pali word for spontaneous generosity of heart. If you feel inspired to support these talks by offering dana, you can do so by visiting my website at www.mindfulvalley.com. Thank you so much. So, how many of you have been following these Eightfold Path talks with the show of hands? Okay, so how many haven't? Maybe raise your hands. Okay. Yeah. So if you've missed any of these talks, we're on a series on the Noble Eightfold Path. So tonight we're on right or skillful mindfulness, samasati in Pali. And even though this is an insight meditation class, I'm going to start by offering you a very famous Zen parable on mindfulness. And I think many of you may have heard this before, but it's kind of the quintessential story on mindfulness. And it's about a man who's walking through the woods, and he suddenly is surprised by this huge tiger in the woods, and he sees that it's walking towards him and growling and starting to give chase. So of course the man turns around and starts running like hell with the tiger chasing him. And just when the tiger's about to leap and jump on the man, he sees with some relief that there's a cliff in front of him, and below is the sea. And so what he decides is that he's going to crawl down. He has time to crawl down the side of this cliff. He doesn't have much of a choice. And he realizes actually that there's a vine on the side of the rocks that can support his weight. And so he's a little relieved about this. So he starts slowly to climb down away from the tiger. And as he does, he starts to recognize that kind of in the middle that he's essentially caught between the tiger above him who's still growling and the sea with the rocks and everything below. And besides that, as if he didn't have enough to worry about, he sees two rats, one black and one white, and they're both gnawing on the vines. They're nibbling on the vine. And so in the very middle of all of this that's happening, stuck in the middle of all of this, he spots this big, white, beautiful strawberry right in front of him, growing out of the face of the cliff, not far from him. And so with one hand holding the vine, he reaches out and plucks it, this beautiful ripe strawberry, and takes a bite. And it's one of the most delicious things he can remember eating in a long time. And this, my friends, is where we currently find ourselves. This is kind of a metaphor for life, right here in the space between our past and our future, facing the strawberry that is our life in the moment. This is it. This is the strawberry. And the present is all we really have. It's this. We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. So traditionally, the story of the tiger at the top, of course, represents our past. And the sea below is the mystery. The sea is a mysterious place, right? It's a mystery of our future, which includes our ultimate end, which even though we have tons of opinions about it, is really a mystery, Have you ever been there? Maybe. Some of you might be. Yeah, absolutely. The two rats, night and day, black and white, which represents time, which is always nibbling at us. And the truth is, we are each born into this world without much of a choice, right? We start climbing over that cliff the moment we're born, and those rats immediately start nibbling, right? So in our current position, stuck between birth and death, we have no choice but to face the reality of time, the truth of impermanence, which in Pali is anicca. We recognize that everything is in constant flow and fleeting, including ourselves. Okay? So really the only moment we ever have that's ever guaranteed The only thing that's ever guaranteed is this moment, this present moment. And what I love to remember is that the strawberry, if you will, is actually precisely precious because of where we find ourselves, caught on this vine of life. Some of us closer to the tiger, some of us closer to the sea, right? And with full awareness that these nibbling mice, day and night, never ending, and they will eventually chew through that vine. We all know that. We try to pretend that that's not happening, but eventually that's the truth for all of us. And if we're honest, we might notice that we spend a vast amount of time and energy trying to deny this reality, or to run away from it, outrun it, change it, or maybe ignore it and pretend it isn't even there, right? Or true. We can do that too. Some of us, we can be in such denial that we just believe that's not true. And sadly, just as we can't stop the flow of time, we also need to recognize that sadly we can't climb back up that vine either. We can't do it. We can't climb back up. As much as we'd like to sometimes, we can't go back in time. And I like the way the writer Derek Lynn talks about the tiger of our past. He says, if we constantly beat ourselves up for not being able to do certain things as well as we should have, or if we wallow in regret and shame over mistakes we've made, then the tiger has wounded us with its sharp claws. If we cannot let go of the negative experiences from the past that make us timid and afraid, or if we feel like victims because we come from a traumatic or perhaps abusive background, then the tiger has taken a painful bite out of us. Unfortunately, the path of time is a one-way street. The fearsome tiger guards the top of the cliff, and mere mortals may not pass. So the idea here is that if we're too preoccupied with the tiger of our past, or with the fear of what lies ahead, that vast, mysterious sea, if we're preoccupied by these things, these two things, what we're going to miss is the strawberry that's right here in front of us. We're going to miss it. In fact, we're going to miss many, many moments, many, many more millions of those strawberries. The cliff is strewn with strawberries, but our eyes are looking up or down, and we don't see them at all. We just miss them entirely. So I actually experienced a really funny example of this myself a few weeks ago. It was later in the day. I remember this vividly. And I was sitting in my office still working when I realized that it had gotten later and the sun was setting. I'm usually out there when the sun's setting, kind of waiting for it and walking around. And the sky was completely pink, and the sun was, this big, bright, beautiful globe of orange. That happens, you see the roundness of it, it's orange, beautiful, right on the edge of the horizon. And I didn't want to miss it. And so I threw on my farm boots, and I grabbed my camera, and I ran out, kind of almost tripping in the fields, because I knew that I needed to get to the place where I'd have the best view. I knew my place where I'd go to watch this. And when I stopped running, and I was lifting my camera up to my eyes to get a picture of the sunset, of course not stopping to enjoy it, that moment, as I was lifting my camera to my eyes, I noticed 5 deer, and they were leaping across the field. And what I realized was that I had startled them, and I had actually run right past them. Right? And I kind of laughed out loud when I recognized what I had done. And so the point is that we miss so much of our actual life, all those deer, all those strawberries, by not training ourselves to be mindful of right now, this moment, what's here. Right? However it is, however this moment is, we open to the mystery, to what's next. Open up to that mystery. And by the way, if we're clinging too tightly to that vine, if you will, we're not going to be able to let go with one hand so that we can reach out and really enjoy the strawberries either. We're not going to be able to even let go and do it. It's like maybe we'll see that strawberry is there, it's waiting for us, but we just can't allow ourselves to enjoy it because we can't let go. Right? I love this teaching that I found recently from Rabbi Shlomo, who was also known, many of you may know, as the singing rabbi. He said, people walk around sad because they don't know what to do with their future. You have this minute right now. What are you doing with it? If you are filled with joy for 1 minute, then you will know what to do with the next minute too. We are given this minute, not tomorrow. Sadness is very much concerned with what I don't have, and I really don't have tomorrow yet. The truth is, I am always standing before nothingness, because I am not existent yet for the next minute. I am not here yet. Time is not there. The world is not there. The world is here right now. I just love that. So how does this relate to mindfulness or sati in Pali, S-A-T-I? So mindfulness is often described as a bare, immediate, whole mind-body awareness of the present moment. And when we are mindful, we're fully present without any judgment with what is. We're right here in between the tiger and the sea, just this moment. We're not lost in daydreams or anticipation, indulgences, worry. We're just right here with a fresh, new, sort of non-conceptual awareness of our bodies and minds and whatever's happening. So this means that even if the moment that we're in is completely unpleasant, with mindfulness we're simply experiencing it, the fear, the anger, the grief, the sadness, the joy, whatever it is. And we're experiencing it as it's happening without adding all the layers of our thoughts and beliefs and stories to the moment. Or maybe making the pain of whatever's happening worse by adding all our negative narratives to it, which is what we do. So when we're practicing mindfulness then, we're learning to simply experience, in Thich Nhat Hanh's famous words, this is it. This is what we are experiencing right now, no matter what it looks like. And those 3 words, this is it, I say them often, and it's actually a very powerful phrase. And the first time I saw it, it made such an impact on me, the first time I saw it, even though it's so simple. Many of you have heard this. I was on a long retreat, and I was standing in line for breakfast after getting up at 5 a.m., which you all know I don't love. And maybe for that reason or other reasons, I don't even remember why I was grumpy, but I remember that I was grumpy and tired and really needing a cup of coffee, which they don't have on retreat. It's caffeinated tea, and so I was like, all right, I need my coffee. And wondering why people think they need to lead a modern day retreat without coffee. Yes,
we have coffee. Yes!
And we get up at 7:30. So, as I was standing in my grumpiness, I saw this man. There was a couple people ahead of me, and he had a t-shirt on with words on it, writing on it, which you're really not supposed to do on retreat because it's distracting. But I was so glad he had that there. Because in my grumpiness, I saw, this is it. It made me laugh out loud, and I'd never seen those words before. And I talked to him later, and of course he told me that those were words from Thich Nhat Hanh. And so it just completely woke me up without the coffee. The Buddhist monk and scholar Bhikkhu Bodhi explains mindfulness this way. To practice mindfulness is a matter not so much of doing, but of undoing. Not thinking, not judging, not associating, not planning, not imagining, not wishing. All of these, quote, doings of our modes of interference, ways the mind manipulates experience and tries to establish its dominance. Mindfulness undoes the knots and tangles of these doings by simply noting. It does nothing but note, watching each occasion of experience as it arises, stands, and passes away. In the watching, there is no room for clinging, no compulsion to saddle things with our desires. There is only a sustained contemplation of experience in its bare immediacy, carefully and precisely and persistently. Okay? That's a bit of a summary, a pretty clear one. In one of the classic modern texts of insight meditation, Mindfulness in Plain English, Bhante Gunaratana writes that mindfulness is essential to help us see beyond symbols and concepts. Mindfulness, he said, is pre-symbolic. It is not shackled to logic. The actual experience lies beyond the words and above the symbols. Pre-symbolic. Helpful to remember. And there's a really great drawing that many of you may have seen that is on the internet and around. I think I had it on my MBSR flyers at one point that is brilliant because it so simply exemplifies what Bhante and others are talking about. And it shows a person outside walking on a path, and above each of them, it's a person and a dog, and above each of them are these thought bubbles. And it shows what's inside the dog's head and what's inside the person's head. And above the person's head, the bubble shows images of work and other people and cell phones and jarbled swear words and exclamation points and stuff. This is kind of a mess. And above the dog's head, there's a duplicate drawing of the exact path that they're walking on. And the title of this drawing usually says something like, "Why your dog is happier than you are." It's so simple, but it's really true. So, some of us might assume, of course, that we're always aware of the present. We're just right here living our lives. What are you talking about? Where else would we be, right? What are you talking about? We're right here, we're present, we're living our lives. But if you're really honest with yourself, you'll notice that this is not true. Just going to tell you right now, this is not true. You're dreaming most of the time. We are. The Thai meditation master Ajahn Buddhadasa has summarized our habitual way of living in 3 words. Lost in thought is our habitual way of living. Check it out for yourself. So one of the major gifts of our mindfulness practice is that it really helps us to see how often we are not here, how often we're dreaming and really lost in thought and dreaming our lives away. And the more we practice, the more we might start to notice that what we're really experiencing so much of the time is the mind having a variety of different conversations with itself, right? We talk to ourselves all day, and then we listen to what we're saying and believe that that's true. It's like when you're watching a movie, and you ever do that, and then you have a DVD, and then you turn on the director's commentary, and so now it's the director talking over other people, talking over the movie. So it's like there's a movie and that unreal drama, and then there's a second commentary on top of all of it. And in our lives, so much of the time, we're experiencing our lives from the viewpoint of the director, and we're being constantly distracted and caught up in all the director's opinions and views and explanations about simply what's happening, right? We're not just watching the movie. There's all this other stuff that's going on explaining it. And so again, what we're really doing is kind of dreaming, and we're asleep, not experiencing our lives as they are right now when that's happening. And so this is what the Buddha is talking about when he's talking about awakening. It's what we're training ourselves to do through this practice, to wake up to what's right here, which is all our senses. our bodies, this is where we live, right? So taste, touch, sight, sound, smell, all our senses, and the sixth sense, which is the mind, right? What that's experiencing. And so I usually give this example of this. Think about what your day was like today. Think about your whole day. Some of you mentioned gratitude and everything for your day. What is that now? What is it? It's a dream, isn't it? Because we can make up stuff too about how it went. Think about your siblings and how they remember stuff that you did. We make it up, right? As we go along. Yeah, so it's a dream. And then what are you going to do when you get home tonight? You have plans, of course, right? Do those ever turn out the way that you plan them to? Ever. They never do. So that, the future is really, it's a dream. It's just what we make it up. So now you're going to do that. Even if it's like, I'm going to have a grilled cheese sandwich. That probably won't happen, My husband's going to refuse to make that. Right? That's just the dream of a grilled cheese sandwich. So, not only are we dreaming so often, but what we're usually so often also doing is using the present moment as a springboard for even more thoughts, which not only keeps us asleep, but creates its own new universe, a whole nother dream world. And so, through our formal meditation practice, we can start to observe how we do this and then catch ourselves doing it in our daily lives and wake ourselves up. So for instance, maybe you're sitting in meditation and you're listening to the crickets and you're totally aware of this nice breeze on the skin and you're aware of your breath and you're aware of the state of your body. You're just fully awake and present to all of it. And then suddenly you hear an airplane fly by, just an airplane. And without warning, your mind starts to think about how much you're afraid of flying. And almost instantly you think about that family visit that's coming up soon. And then maybe you start visualizing yourself packing your suitcase and then remembering what you need to pack and visualizing forgetting things. And then you start thinking about that difficult conversation you had last month with one of your relatives and how you still feel really resentful about this. And then you start going over and over the conversation again in your head and start planning exactly what you're going to say to them. And pretty soon you're just completely enraged and furious, and you need to get up and stop meditating and go have a beer. And that's all from a simple airplane passing by. Yeah. And the Buddha calls this mental construction papancha, and it's sometimes translated as elaboration, embellishment, or conceptual proliferation. And the word papancha actually makes me think of popcorn because it sounds like that. Papancha, 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 right? And think about what happens when you're making popcorn. It starts out slow. There's a few pops, kind of here and there. Maybe put that in the microwave, a few pops. And then suddenly there's an explosion of pops, right? And then suddenly, if you're totally distracted and you let this keep going, and you're distracted by it, guess what? Everything gets burnt, it smells bad. And there's smoke. Right? So that's papancha. That's really kind of the trajectory of it. The very same things with our minds. When we're letting our minds drift further and further and further, allowing them to go into that storyline, which, by the way, includes all of our opinions and stories and beliefs, this can lead to the fire alarm going off, really. So we start to feel the burn of frustration or anger or envy, resentment, shame, greed, all of the stuff, if we keep going along with that thread away from the present moment. So mindfulness practice is so much about training ourselves to first see our thoughts and our very natural tendency towards papancha, and training ourselves to wake up when it's happening and come back again and again to the present moment. When we do that with our mindfulness practice, come back home, try again, come back to the present. So we can use this in our daily lives then. As we practice on the cushion, we can take it out into our lives. So for instance, maybe you're washing the dishes, and you start to notice as you're washing the dishes that you've become lost in thought. Your mindfulness practice can notice where you've gone away, maybe starting to think about that difficult conversation or whatever it is, and it can remind you to come back home to the immediate bare experience of washing the dishes. So feeling the warm water, smelling that soap, hearing the squeaking of the dishes, feeling your feet on the ground, noticing your breath or the sunshine through the window. Come back home to the present. And when we're suddenly present, not lost in thought, we might also then notice that there's an emotion present, right? Maybe there's sadness, maybe there's grief, or maybe there's a sense of gratitude or contentment. Well, we might not notice what our bodies or our hearts are feeling if we're so caught up in the story. So whatever's happening with mindfulness, we're fully awake to all of it, and by the way, letting it flow through us, letting it flow through. So we can start to trust more and more through our practice that, again, we can just be with our thoughts rather than being our thoughts, rather than identifying with them, or becoming our emotions. We are simply experiencing a feeling or a belief, recognizing that and letting it flow through us, rather than becoming, identifying with that feeling or thought, wrapping ourselves up into it. Okay? Pema Chodron, my favorite Buddhist nun, explains it this way. We are all a mixture of aggression and loving kindness, hard-heartedness and tender open-heartedness, small-mindedness and forgiving open mind. We are not a fixed, predictable, static identity that anyone can point to and say, you are always like this. You are always the same. Life's energy is never static. It is shifting, fluid, changing as the weather. So, with our mindfulness practice, it's so important to remember that we are not practicing to float away to some other blissful state or going away into the dream world. That's not what we're practicing. Okay? So a lot of times people think that that's what it's about. I want to get away, like Kelgon, take me away. That's not it. Although that'd be really nice right now sometimes. We want our mindfulness practice to be grounded here in the present more and more, so that we're not floating away into the past or the future daydreaming or caught up in papancha. We want to stay grounded. So that means that if during your meditation practice you find yourself drifting off to a place that feels like you're not here, right? Maybe someplace that feels a little otherworldly, or maybe even like there's nothing, like you've gone away, completely gone. Sometimes people say, I came back. And where were you? I came back. So when this is happening, you're not practicing mindfulness, you're practicing going away. Okay? So if that's your practice, see if you can change that up a little bit and stay present. So we want to make our mindfulness a powerful grounding force, something that helps us to anchor ourselves very firmly in the present. And in the sutras, this grounding force of mindfulness is often compared to a stone or a rock. And a mind without mindfulness is compared to a pumpkin, which I thought would be really easy given this time of year. And Bhikkhu Bodhi explains it this way, this image of a pumpkin. So think of a rock, right? And now think of the pumpkin. As a pumpkin placed on the surface of a pond soon floats away and always remains on the water's surface, a stone does not float away. It stays where it is put and at once sinks into the water until it reaches bottom. Similarly, when mindfulness is strong, the mind stays with its object and penetrates its characteristics deeply. It does not wander and merely skim the surface, as the mind destitute of mindfulness does. Okay? So this object that we're using as our focus of attention with our practice could be things like the breath, right? We're using that, focusing on the breath, focusing on that object, really getting intimate with all the nuances of the breath, hot, cold, deep, shallow, wispy, whatever it is, watching the flow of the breath, that can be an object. The object can also be sound. We penetrate that deeply. We're aware of sound and the changing of sound, right? And this could be a physical sensation in the body, pain, flow, tiredness, emotion, right? There's an emotion, anger, whatever, grief running through me. We pay attention to that. That's an object. That's what's here. Anger's here. Grief is here. Sadness is here. Joy is here. So that's another object. Okay? And our thoughts themselves are also objects. We're noticing the nature of our mind in the present moment. In the present moment, I'm aware of the thought that went through the mind that I want a grilled cheese sandwich when I get home tonight. I'm aware of that. But I haven't gone away and I'm not visualizing myself at home eating it. I'm just aware that I had that thought. I'm aware that it's a passing thought. Okay? And also aware of I didn't eat dinner tonight, so my tummy's a little hungry. That's in the present moment. Okay? So these are all objects, and we're very intimately observing through our practice the characteristics of our objects. And when we can use our bare awareness to keep the mind focused on a particular object, what's going to happen is that it's going to calm the mind, okay, so that we can see things even more clearly. That's, in a way, the calming practice, is when you use your concentration practice to hone in your awareness, is going to calm the mind. So maybe, for instance, you discover that the mind is racing for whatever reason. Okay? You just notice, I have busy mind tonight. And when you recognize this, you might literally stop and close your eyes. Okay? And this could be out in the daily world. This is when you start to notice. You stop, you close your eyes, and you go to what are your touch points, called your touch points, to become present. So you go to your breath, okay? You go to your hands, and you go to your feet, and you go to your tummy, or your seat, your seat. Those are your touch points. Do you feel those right now? They almost instantly bring you into your body, right? So you go to your touch points. And then you place your focus on the breath and make a conscious effort to just stay with the body and your breathing. Or maybe you just stop. You have busy mind throughout the day and it's just kind of chaos. You stop. That's the first step, just recognizing it. You stop, and then you might look at something. Could be as simple as I was writing, it was a cup of water shimmering in the sun. It was reflecting the trees. It was beautiful because the trees were moving and the water was moving. It was just beautiful, and I just stayed with that movement, and it was calming. Right? So that could be to stop and look. So your breath, or stop and look at something. And when we do this, what happens is it temporarily takes us out of the dream world that we are experiencing and directly back home to the present. So you can use these tools to remind yourself to come home. Okay? And this is exactly where we can wake up and discover more peace and joy in our lives in more moments of our lives. To use the practice to wake ourselves up over and over and over again in more moments of our lives. Teacher Sharon Salzberg writes, in times of great struggle, when there is nothing else to rely on and nowhere else to go, it is the return to the moment that is the act of faith. From that point, openness to possibility, strength, patience, and courage can arise. Moment by moment, we can find our way through. So that's the grounding element of mindfulness. It helps to bring us back to the present moment, keeps us from floating away into our worry and our fear and our anger and all our negative commentary. Might be really important right now, actually, right? Come back home. Mindfulness is also considered traditionally a kind of a guard, in that it keeps watch over the thoughts that are stirring up the calm of the lake of the mind, if you will. So when we can notice that our mind is suddenly occupied by thoughts that are causing all that water to stir up, we can then either calm them or even abandon them before they can cause ourselves or others harm. Okay? We can see what's coming into the lake. Remembering that it is not outside forces that are stirring up the waters of the lake of the mind. Okay? It's really our own thoughts about what's happening all around us that causes the waters to stir up. So you might even think of this guarding aspect of mindfulness as a kind of mindful lifeguard. I don't know where I came up with that. But, he or she is on the lookout for those misbehaving thoughts or stories that want to dive in the water and start splashing around and riling up the surface. So, keep your lifeguard on guard for the mind. And as we continue our practice, what happens more and more is that we really start to know experientially for ourselves, not because anyone told us, but more and more we see very clearly the truth of what are called the three characteristics of life, which are, we all experience dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, disappointment, suffering, okay? Anicca, impermanence, everything's impermanent and constantly changing, and anatta, which is no self. We ourselves are also in constant flow. So those are the three characteristics of life. And as our practice becomes more and more refined, we start to realize that the creation of a self is actually, truly, simply a moment-to-moment process, and that every single moment is actually comprised of microscopic events. And these events are summarized as the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which I'm going to be exploring in much more detail this year. I'm really excited, so hopefully you all will get some benefits of that. Because in October I'm going to offer a 5-day retreat on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which means I'm going to be studying them a little bit more and bringing them here for you. To very briefly summarize, these include body or sense impressions, feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, our perceptions, and our thoughts. And all of these, if you'll start to notice, arise and pass continually like waves on the ocean. And the idea is the more that we practice, the more we recognize that all of this is just waves of experience. Okay? And I want to emphasize here just for a moment that this kind of selflessness, anatta, does not in any way mean that we're rejecting our experiences in any way. We're not getting rid of anything. Our experiences are exactly the same. All that's changed is that we stop identifying with them. We've stopped calling them me or mine. Okay? So I think I've lost everybody, but I'll continue with that thing later. And so what we're learning to identify with instead of a self is mindfulness or awareness of itself, the vast awareness that is experiencing all of it. We're identifying more with awareness than with a self that we think is permanent. So another of my teachers, Jack Kornfeld, who lives in California, talks a lot about the sea in reference to practice because he lives in California. And he was once asked if he ever surfs. And he said, I don't outer surf. No, I inner surf. Because I think we're all surfers on the waves of life, the waves of gain and loss, praise and blame, success and failure, of pleasure and pain. Every human incarnation is woven from the opposites of birth and death and joy and sorrow. So if we're to live graciously with a wise spirit and a loving heart, we all have to learn to surf. So I think I'm going to end there and just offer you a very brief practice before we end. I invite you all into a sitting posture. And just, as always, taking a nice deep breath in, deep breath out, dropping the shoulders, letting go. Continuing to notice the breath. Even right now in this moment, can this be one of those strawberries? And you just be here for this moment, without moving ahead or back. Noticing the sounds outside, all the different sounds, and inside. Staying also with the breath. And just notice the state of the body right now, physical sensation. Maybe get a sense of the whole body. Just what's here, right now. Can you be aware of thinking as the kind witness? It's not identified with the thoughts, but simply observing what the mind is producing. You might even try on the phrase, what is this? Mind, heart, body, sensing and feeling right now, rather than a name. What is this? Mind, heart, body, sensing and feeling right now, rather than identifying with a self that's experiencing. Just try it on. With the eyes still closed, just listening to these words from Stephen Taylor, who writes, "A moment without thought, and the background noise ceases, and I can suddenly hear the silence between sounds, the silence beneath sound, from which all sound emerged like waves from the sea. A moment without thought, and the fog disperses, and the world is filled with translucent light, new dimensions of detail and sharpness and color and depth. A moment without thought, and these suburban streets are a pristine new world, like a garden glistening with dew, the morning after creation, as if a husk of familiarity has cracked and fallen away, leaving naked primal isness. A moment without thought, and I'm no longer standing separate, no longer an island, but part of the sea, no longer a static center, but part of the flowing stream. A moment without thought, and the train has stopped between stations, and there was never any motion, never any track, a moment like a wormhole, infinitely expanding, like stepping through a narrow gate to find an endless open plain, the panorama of the present. And this new world of no thought is neither alien nor unfamiliar, but a place where benevolence blows through the air and soft, shimmering energy fills every space, and the sunlight is the translucent white light of spirit, the deepest, closest, warmest place, the ground where I am rooted.